Well, hello and welcome to episode 60 of the Adoption and Fostering Podcast with me, Scott Casson René, and him,
Al Coates.
Well, I was expecting the Al Coates.
No, there's no Al Coates about me this week.
Oh, is it not? Oh, down to business, folks. Down to business.
No, I'm super sensible. Me on program, on track. I've got show notes and everything. Well, it's like
show. What show are you going on?
I did after this one. I do like a real podcast that I
do a proper work.
Yeah, get paid to do it.
Make change for you. So how are you, Al?
I am actually I'm surprisingly well. Yep, check. I was just checking. And you? And you? How are you?
Yes, not bad. I'm recovering, but we'll cover that in a bit.
Well, yes, we are. You are recovering. It's been a very exciting few weeks in your life. But shall we push all the wedding chat to the back end?
Yeah.
So it's
more for everybody.
So it's more of an opt-in than an opt-out, and I guess that some of our international listeners would care less, or maybe they don't. Maybe not a lot happens.
I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe they look forward to our bit of banter afterwards. Who knows?
Maybe it's a slow week in El Salvador.
No, it's Mauritius, isn't it?
Mauritius, yeah.
Yeah. Or the Isle of Man.
Ethiopia. We've got some listeners in Ethiopia as well.
Oh God. Anyway.
Isle of Man.
Anyway, who have we got tonight, Al?
We've got Twayna Mayne, who is a comedian and an adoptee, but also a young. Well, she's not. Well, she's a young woman. She's my age. She's young. A woman who went through the foster care system. She's also she's a blogger. Have you listened to her blog?
Do you know what? I haven't listened to anything, but I was very intrigued. But I'm not going to say anything. But I was very intrigued by her, and it's a name because it confuses me. The name. I thought it was like a mix of her letters originally, and
what do you mean?
Say her name again.
Twayna Mayne.
Yeah, it reminded me of someone else who had mixed up the kind of first letters of the name.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Podcasting gold. Podcasting gold. This is
serious phrase.
Middle-aged men discuss a woman's name.
Yeah, I know.
And so she, because I think she's got a really interesting perspective on a bit like Cat Peace we had a couple last year. So she's kind of a young adult, and she's got a unique perspective on adoption and fostering and transracial adoption. And she's also doing a Radio 4 comedy program on identity, and part of that is going to be about her experience as an adoptee and being adopted by white mum, and so there's all that kind of stuff that's coming out in the summer.
Yeah.
And actually, if you follow our Loco Parentis on Twitter, you can go to the show and see what she's doing. There's a link to the screenings. What do you call it when a radio thing? It's not a showing or a screening, is it? It's a.
I don't know.
It's a. I'll think about that.
A show.
Yeah, sure. And they're going to be recorded live, and then that will be really interesting. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. So I got in touch with her and I asked if she would be willing to come on the podcast, and like a woman with nothing to lose, she came on. So shall we cut to the chase? There's a few things I want to chat to you about afterwards. I want to chat to you about after adoption. Okay. I want to chat to you. Actually, I've got a bone to pick with Adoption UK.
Oh God, here we go.
The adoption register.
Generally, the whole organisation, or just
every last single one of you, right from the CEO right down to the paper boy. And you. So there's a few things I want to chat about after that. And then so we'll crack on with the interview. Here she is. Today I'm speaking to Twayna Mayne, and you are a comedian. You are a podcaster extraordinaire. Tell us about yourself. Who are you? Why am I talking to you today?
Why are you talking to me? Well, I was adopted when I was 14. And that was a result of my foster mum asking me and my brothers when we were about 8 if she'd like to adopt us, and I've been with her since I was 3. So
you must be one of the oldest adoptions ever in the UK.
I think so. So I was I was closer to 15 actually. It was about 6 weeks, I think, before my 15th birthday. I've got 2 older twin brothers, and we were all adopted together, and they are a year and a half older than me, so they were over 16. So yeah,
that's exceptional, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is now. It is. I didn't really. I don't know. It's not like I knew loads of people who were adopted when I was growing up, so it's not like I could compare it with anybody else. And I was aware, I suppose, when we were getting closer to being adopted and sort of being in secondary school and the rest of it, and then we started to be slightly more involved in certain bits, like sitting in on a few meetings here or there.
Yeah.
And realising that my friends were at school in the morning and we were at home with social worker and a couple of teachers and our mum who was going to adopt us. Just talking about what was going to be happening sort of in 6 months, what was going on. And you're like, yeah, this is not really a normal teenage 11, 12, 13-year-old kind of thing. This is, do you know what I mean? So it was unusual, and everyone kept saying it was quite unusual, but I don't know why it took so long. It just kind of did. And I think it's partly because my mum asked us sort of when I was about 8 or 9 if this is what we wanted to do. So adoption is a slow process, as I don't know. I don't really know that much about adoption. Do you know what I mean? But I do realise that it is quite slow.
Well, I think that's kind of quite a US model, that quite often older children are adopted, and that's kind of quite consensual in the sense that you made an informed decision. Well, I guess you made and it was your choice. Whereas
it was definitely a choice. Even though the older I've got, and I'm not anti-adoption, I'm not pro-adoption, I just kind of I think people really just need to think about what adoption is and what it means for everybody, and also especially what it means for children, for the children who are going to be adopted. Like, I don't think anybody really thinks about them in that sense of like, this is how it's going to impact your life to be adopted. I think just people look at it from the outside and think, this is a really nice thing that people are doing. And it is, but it's also it's just so complicated. But but obviously when my mum asked us, I just knew that the life that we'd had. My birth mum, she had me and my brothers. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I know you're really open and honest. If you people listen to your podcast, which is the Loco Parentis Podcast, go and listen to it because it's fantastic and it's funny and it's different and it's got a really unique voice. But you're really open, aren't you? And I I listened to it and I was going, wow, it's all out there. I was just...
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think I've started to talk about, because I do stand-up comedy, so I've started to talk a little bit about, a few years ago I started to talk about being adopted, because I just found some good jokes out of it. It's just quite funny. And then revealing that my mum is white, do you know what I mean? So that's quite a funny thing. But I also found that it was quite helpful for me to talk about being adopted, because it's not something I really talk about normally, and I've not really spoken to my friends about, because I don't know how you talk about being adopted.
There's no blueprint.
It's one of those. I don't know when you're meant to drop it into a conversation. By the way. Yeah. So you come round to my house. You're going to meet my mum. She's a completely different colour from me, and it's like it's these things. So you never have that conversation with anybody. So I've started in the last 3, 4, 5 years started to talk about being adopted. So that's what I've been doing. It's helpful for me to do it. It's why I've done it.
It's peculiar because we could sit here and talk about your experience of fostering, because actually up to 14 you were a long-term foster placement. The technical language. So can I ask? I don't want to be rude, but what sort of time scale was that? What year was that when you were adopted?
I was adopted. I don't know how old I am now. I do. Late 80s, early 90s.
Right. All right.
I think I'm trying to work out. Yeah.
Because that's 89,
90, something like that. Yeah.
So that means you straddled kind of the end of one system and the start of a new one. So that's probably right.
Okay.
It's like the 1989 Children Act sits bang in the middle of that, doesn't it? Which changed the emphasis.
Does it?
Yeah, but right, yeah. So probably people scratching their heads going, oh, what does all this new law mean? Well, how do we work this one out? This is a tricky little set of people.
Yeah.
I feel like I've interrupted you. You are literally, my mind is kind of fizzing with loads of questions. So I'm going to start with like a proper question, like a proper interviewer, like on the telly. So tell me, you've been quite open about why you as a family, because this little family unit you've got, why you came into the care system, and that's really kind of a common story, isn't it? Your story. It's a well-worn path. So the question is, are you happy to share that story? Because I think that's really interesting, your perspective on it.
So my birth mum had my older brothers, who were a year and a half older than me, and they're twins. And then a year and a half later, me and my twin sister came along. And then about 10 weeks after me and my twin sister were born, she passed away. And then when I was about 2 is when I first went into care. That's when I was aware of other stuff going on in our family, which meant that just stuff wasn't right. And that was when I was 2.
Do you remember that experience of going into care? Is it, or?
I remember going to stay with our grandparents. We stayed with our grandparents sort of every now and again. And when I say every now and again, I don't know what that means. I do remember not being in our flat, and I remember being dropped around at our grandparents. So that would have been me and my older brothers, just to kind of stay the night. And they would feed us, and that was kind of it. And just aware that our birth mum's relationship with her own parents wasn't very good. Yeah. And it was just kind of, and that was kind of obvious. And it was just, I don't know, but this is me being a 2-year-old, but also talking about it as an adult, where you're like, is that real? It's like, it is real. I do remember it, but you don't know what context it was in. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't make sense, but you also know that something's not right here. Do you know, whenever she was around, it's like, she's not, this is just not working. It's very dysfunctional, it's very chaotic. Sometimes it's violent. Do you know what I mean? So that was a thing. And then there were just various bits when I remember going and staying with a foster family, a white foster family, sort of, and my older brothers were staying with my mum, who then adopted. Like when I say my mum, I'm talking about the woman who fostered us all and then adopted us. Yeah. So they were placed with her, and I was with her foster family, not that far away, but we weren't all together. And I remember my older brothers coming to visit me on my 3rd birthday at my foster family's house, and they came with my mum. And I remember I was so happy. I was happy to see them, but I didn't speak to them. I remember opening the front door and they were there, and they grinned at me and I grinned at them, and it was just like, oh yeah, this is us. We're back together. The gang's back together again.
That's
and
fantastic.
We played, and then they went home, and it was just kind of normal. That was kind of just a nice thing. And I remember being in this foster family and just being a nice family, and I was the youngest child, and it was just a nice little kind of family unit, and it was just. And then we went back into the birth home for a bit, and then it's just all the chaos continues, and just her disappearing sometimes for a night and leaving us, and just like no food, just that kind of stuff. Sometimes the police being called.
It's quite a chaotic kind of.
Yeah, it was just really. It was just. It was just.
Not
there
good.
was just a lot of that going on, and then when I was 3.5, my younger brothers were born, who were also twins. Oh. And she had 3 sets of twins, and but at that time my twin had passed away. So at one point though, she had 5 children aged 5 and under, which I kind of think. Wow. That's difficult for anybody.
That's a big deal, isn't it?
For anybody.
It's a massive.
And if you're somebody who's quite obviously struggling, then that's just going to be. This is like
it's catastrophic.
It's just like this is not going to work. It's not working with the ones that you had. Yeah. Bringing more into this is just like
it's not going to fix it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So. The twins, when they came, there was a final incident when we were all in the flat, and it involved our birth mum getting into a fight with my younger brother's dad and the police being called and her being arrested. And I think that was the last time that we were all together as a family. I do remember the police coming in, she being arrested, ambulance coming because he had a cut on his face and all these children there. And it was like, yeah, no, this is over.
Yeah.
This is, in this sense, it's over. So from that time, my younger brothers went to a different foster family, and me and my older brothers went back to our mums, who'd we'd been backwards and forwards to a few times. She kind of was like, if they come back into care, I will have these three children.
She sort of claimed you
so
almost.
Yeah. So, and she was already at one point fostering 2 other children as well. So at one point she had 5 children in a small bedroom, 2-bedroom house in South London, and 2 different sets of siblings. And she kept us because the other ones went back to their birth family.
Fostering's changed.
Yeah. It's the old school way. It's the old school way, isn't it? So but it kind of worked for us. It worked for us.
Well, yeah, it must have worked for you. So that then means you're living in this family, this totally different family unit. You've got a white mum.
Yeah.
That's something that's really interesting, and I'm conscious that sense of difference can be tricky for some children, not all children. Yeah. So was that a factor in you as you grew up? Was that something you were...
I think it was a bit more when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, more than when I was a young child. But also I think I grew up in a house with my older brothers.
Yeah.
I think that was a lot easier. I grew up in London. Do you know what I mean? I grew up in a big city, so in a way, it kind of, to me, it felt quite difficult sometimes when you go out of the house.
Yeah. And
you have to deal with people outside of your family, sort of just deal with other people and their kind of perceptions and
it's interesting.
Whatever they think.
Because it's interesting.
They think you are, or
my daughter's black, and like you say, in the house it's not an issue, but the minute you walk out the door, you're conscious that we raise a question mark in everybody's head.
Yeah.
And I went out with my daughter. We were in central London, and it was funny because we saw exactly this. So that reflected. We saw what looked like a white mum with a black little girl, and which there could be 1,000 reasons for that, but it still raises a question mark, doesn't it? For what, bad, right or wrongly?
I always kind of thought. It just it made us stick out for the wrong reasons, because I always kind of felt like it kind of implies that something's gone wrong somewhere, and so that you're not. It was just obvious to people that maybe it's kind of like, who is this woman with these children? Do you know what I mean? Is it a teacher? Is it a social worker? Who is this? It's not this. These children are not with their actual parent. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, who is this person? Do you know what I mean? It's like that's our parent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it makes other people kind of, and at school as well. Like, school was weird, you know. Like, there's your group of friends who know you, and there's people who I'd known since I was at primary school, and then there's people who only know you from secondary school, so don't know the backstory in any way.
Yeah.
And they're also not in your group of friends. We'll just come over and speak to you, just ask you stuff, like the questions that get thrown at you, and you're like, I don't even know you. You've not even said hello. Do you know what I mean?
What gives you the permission to ask me this stuff?
Yeah, it's just these things that people just kind of think that they can say, and it's just like, it's not all right. It's not all right. It's like, if you ask me in a nice way, I might answer it.
Yeah. But
you've not asked in a nice way. You've not. Everything about this is just all off, and you just think you can just kind of come with whatever. So yeah,
because that's a really sensitive age anyway, isn't it? I think every teenager is really self-conscious and and you know, regardless, teenagers look at the people who are looking after mums and dads and go, you're just so embarrassing. But then to have that difference kind of exacerbated must have been a real terrible, but you
don't want to stick out in any way, and you just kind of want to be normal, whatever normal is. And sometimes, and you know that you're not normal, and and you're also aware that no one is normal. You know that anyway, but you're like, I would just like to just be a little bit normal. Do you know what I mean? I would like not this thing
to have that choice.
Make me, yeah.
Because I guess that choice is removed from you, isn't it? Like every parent's evening you go to, every swimming lesson.
Yeah.
That's really pronounced.
And like some like people, pronounce is a good word. Yeah, it's really pronounced.
So I mean, stretching that out. I mean, because the debate about sort of transracial adoption goes on. Where do you sit on it? Because you can speak firsthand. You know, the concerns that people raise. And
I've changed my mind over the years. I was like no, and I'm not like yes either. I'm just kind of I think it's interesting. And I also kind of think. I think it's like sometimes I'm at that stage where some of my friends are just various people are at the family want to have children, all this, and some people speak about like adoption and all the rest of it. And what I find is the most annoying thing is to me was just people just declare that they want to adopt a black child. I'm like, that is just to me that statement in itself is just like it's just. That's
let's unpack that.
You don't understand. Yeah, you don't understand. You don't understand what you're saying. That's just full of. It's so much stuff in that. Like I'm like, what is it about? What is it about a black child? What is it that makes you, as a white person, qualified to parent a black child?
Yeah.
Just because it's not any old. You're not. They're not any old child. Do you know what I mean? There's so much stuff that comes with this, and it's just like, and what about non-black children? Do you know what I mean? Who you might be a great parent for? Do you know what I mean? It's like what? It's so much stuff, and what do I think about it?
Because it's almost a fetishization of black children, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also a fetishization of children in care, and not understanding about the needs of children in care, and sort of saying. Is that naive thing? It's like you just need to love them. It's like, do you know what? You don't just need to love them. Actually, there's loads more stuff that you need to do.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to raise a child who's been in care. It's like love is a good thing. Yeah, I'm glad you've got the love, but you really don't understand. If you think that love is just going to get you through this, then you're doomed.
Stop.
You really are doomed.
Just stop.
So you know what I mean? It's like I don't know. I just think. Because I've spoken to different people and I don't know that much about it, but then it's kind of like there's so much to do with when it comes to because I don't know the statistics of children sort of like black children or children in colour in care. I don't know the numbers, but there's also
they're overrepresented against the general population, and then in the like the pool of adopters, people of colour are underrepresented.
Yeah.
So it kind of exacerbates.
So in terms of children, but is that because some of the children are too old? Because don't people still just want a really young child to adopt? Aren't there people out there who just want give me a baby? I want a baby.
That's a really interesting question. People would say no, but that's them maybe saying that's kind of this disguised compliance. I think. I mean, you're interviewing me now. That's fine. I think that there's people people come to adoption for a range of reasons, and you can group that into maybe people who are infertile, can't have their own child, want a child. They're probably the ones that want a baby, but are being pragmatic, knowing that actually that's unlikely or there's a chance, but not a great chance. Then there's other people who want to add to their family and doing kind of from an altruistic perspective. And they're much more open to different sorts of children who are not necessarily these cute little babies. But then it gets all really murky because then I know that if you say to an local authority, I'd take a sibling group, then you kind of bump up the queue. And if you'll take a child with sort of uncertain health conditions or question marks against their development, then you get bumped up the queue. So but then it's a hugely politicized issue around race, because I know that like with my daughter, I didn't want to do it. I was really complicated, but we'd been foster carers, and I knew that I live in Northumberland, which is the whitest county. It is and so there's this complicated conversation about how long would she wait with her sister. What is in the best interest? Really complicated, and we danced around the pros and cons for her. And said, we think this is the best in balance, but it's not ideal. Yeah. But she's 13, and we talk about it all the time.
I'm at the stage now where I'm all for actually keeping like sibling groups together. I think sometimes I know I'm also kind of, because we're talking about children, because my experience is a child who's come from care, so I'm just going to talk about children who from care. I can't speak about, you know, people who've been adopted who are not from care. So I know for me, like, the importance of having a family, like a legal family, was massively important. Yeah. And I knew that from when I was 6. And we were made wards of court, and that was all explained to us, that we'd not see our birth mum anymore and all the rest of it. And I knew, and I think I knew it from different people, because we knew another family who were a foster family, and and they'd had some siblings, and they'd had some older children, and they fostered some children, and they adopted some of the children they fostered. And they were going to foster, they were going to adopt some boys that 2 brothers that they'd fostered. They were like a white family. And one of the siblings, the older of the 2 boys, didn't want to be adopted.
Right.
And I was really aware of that, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I found that quite...
That's complicated.
I don't know. And I was just like, and I knew this guy, and he was older than me. I don't know. He was like 5, 6 years older than me, and I knew him, and it was really cool. But he was also just like, he basically. And then when he was 16, he left the home. He was like, I can leave, and I just thought, I don't want to be in that situation where I can just basically just walk out of the door and not have a family anywhere.
Yeah. Because
I knew that we didn't have a connection to our birth family, and if I'm not going to be adopted, then I'm not going to have a family. I'm not going to have. I could just walk out of my house at 16 and just disappear. And I was always like the idea of having a family, like having a legal family, and that was massively important for me. And so. So my mum being white I wasn't kind of like the first person who says I'm going to adopt you, I'm going to say yes. It wasn't like that either. But it was also just like, it came up, I'm having this. It's kind of like this is kind of what I want out of my life. I don't want to be a child who's been in care, because there's so much stigma around being a child in care, and I didn't want that, and I didn't want that baggage to kind of just be a thing that had always been a thing anyway. I was thinking, no, I don't want to come home from school and have my mum cross off kind of parent and put kind of foster parent or guardian next to the official forms on school. All these there's all these little bits that you see, and you're like, there's so much stuff that that you are not legally this person's, even though you technically. That is your mum, do you know what I mean?
Sort of reinforcing that your legal position as opposed to actually how you feel about the woman.
Yeah. So, like, the adoption just basically was just the formalisation of our relationship, really. Mm-hmm. And that was important, but... So I wouldn't want it to... Just me saying... Because then sometimes when I turn around and say to people, oh, I don't believe in transracial adoption... It's usually the people who have just told me that they know somebody who's white who wants to adopt a black child. So I'm sometimes just being a bit of a pain in the arse going, no, I'm totally against it. But I'm also just like, you have to think about these things. It's complicated. Don't just take off your rose tinted glasses. Have a look at it's not what you think it is, and it's not. I don't like this kind of. It's like that. It's like a white saviour thing. It's just like.
Yeah.
It's just like, just calm it down. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting to get your perspective, and I think that that's what I've come to, is that actually it's complicated. Everyone's unique, and we need to scratch around beneath that. Well, that's I find it really interesting you talking about the sense of wanting to belong. It's kind of want to be anchored in the world somewhere.
Yeah.
And having a base that you could call your own, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So was that the same for your older brothers? Were they very much like was there a team talk? Are we all going to do this?
We did discuss it, like the 3 of us. It was discussed, and I remember like my mum sort of mentioned it at tea one evening and said, look, you guys, there's no rush. You just go and just kind of discuss it amongst yourselves. And we used to, my girl was a bit young, but it was about 7 because it was in the old house. 7, 8. Yeah, but we used to share a bedroom, so we used to chat a lot, and we used to just chat a lot in our bedroom. And sometimes, like over the years when we were kids, so when we moved in with our mum, we shared a bedroom before we moved house. So from the age of 3 until nearly 9, we shared a bedroom, just the 3 of us.
Yeah.
So we used to just talk about stuff. And sometimes we used to just talk about when we were with our birth mum in the flat and just what we thought about her and just what we thought she was up to, and maybe if it was coming to Christmas or birthdays, we'd talk about her around those kind of things. So we did discuss it amongst us, and I was kind of like, I thought to myself, if my brothers said no, I'd have to say no as well, because we're a family.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, but I was like, I hope they don't say no, because I actually want to say yes to this. This is, for me, I want to say, and they did say yes, and so I was like, phew, this is cool. Because we were like, it wasn't really much to discuss, really. It was just kind of like, everything just carries on the way it is, really.
Like it
means we can stay here. Yeah, it's just like, cool. It's like, so we're going to stay here. And it means, in a way as well, we can stay here beyond 16. Because always, when we were young, like 16 was the age.
Yeah.
16 was the age that you could leave care. It's like, you can leave care, you can get a flat. You're like, well, I'm only 10. I don't, but that doesn't really. That's how it feels. That's not what I really want to. You're like. But then it's such an. Even though you're like 8, 9, 10 or whatever, 16 is like, it's a massive deal. It's a massive deal.
And it's a big world out there. It's 16. It's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's too big. And there were people who I'd met and I've met sort of. Because my younger brother was adopted into a different family, and his family fostered children. There were children in that family who kind of left care at 16 or left at 18. You're like, you're not ready to go anywhere. He's like, I wasn't ready to go anywhere at that age. It's like no one's ready to go anywhere at 16. They're really not.
It's a big ask, isn't it? For any 16-year-old, it's a big ask.
Even like 16-year-olds who've had like a really, I don't know, like a normal, safe, conventional, just like nothing. It's like, even then, 16's crazy.
You look back now, and I think I've probably felt quite grown up, but I wasn't that grown up. I still didn't want to leave home. And look back now, and I was just a child. You mentioned sort of your birth family, your family. And so obviously there was your 2 younger siblings. So did you maintain relationships with them as you were growing up through the foster care system, and with your mum? Was there any link there?
We maintained a relationship with my younger brothers, and then when just before they were 9, one of them passed away in an accident. So I've only got one younger brother now.
Right.
So a bit younger than 6. He was about 6. I was 9. Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah. So it was hard, and that was quite difficult because it happened during one summer holiday, and then I remember going back to school in the September at junior school, and like everybody knew, because it was quite a big story sort of around the area of what had happened to him, but we didn't go to the funeral. We were asked if we wanted to go to the funeral, and we said no, because we knew that our birth mum would be there. And not only would she be there, she was also in prison at the time. So it was kind of like, we've not seen her for a few years.
Yeah.
She was in prison at the time, and so we were like, is it off we go to school? It's like, yeah, of course it is, fine. And so we went. So my mum went, and she then told us about it afterwards, and it was like, it was quite a difficult day, and our mum was there, sort of handcuffed to a prison guard, and you're like, what the hell is this? It's just like, it's just like, it's just one of these, it's just all these kind of things, and you just think, this life is just, it's just crazy. It's like, there's moments where you think, it's just pure craziness. It's like, it's such a unique, interesting life, but you're like, it's mental. It's just like, it's off the scale. It's not. So I maintained a relationship with my younger brother. Like, our families always we did saw each other at birthdays and Christmas, and then we got to teenagers, we saw each other a lot more because they didn't live that far from us. But as an adult, we don't really have one now because, as I've mentioned on my podcast, he just has been a pain, and that's birth family issues, that he's gone to find our birth mum and not spoke to us about it, and then we've had phone calls and just him just overstepping the mark.
That stuff doesn't go away, does it? Unfortunately.
No.
Because I know with my children, my adult children who are in their 20s now, it just hovers around. It's painful and it's complicated but also they change how they feel about it. How they feel about it at 16 is different to 18, is different to 20, and that's right. That's their right. It's absolutely fine. But I guess you've got a remarkable story, and I think listening to it, you go, whoa! Every one bit of that you can unpack, and at the time it must have felt just, well, this is just life. But as you've grown, was there a moment as you grew up and kind of went, whoa, hang on, this isn't anyone's version of normal. This is nowhere close to anyone's version of normal.
I think I had that quite young, actually. I think I had it as a kid, actually.
Right.
Looking back, I think there's certain things that had happened, and by the time I was 6, and there's photographs where you see of me, like school pictures, and I'm not smiling, and I've chosen not to smile because I'm like, and I was a happy child in certain situations, but it's kind of like there were certain things, like I think the thing to me that got me was when I was about 3 or 4, and I was in the nursery, and I had to be taken out and go to a clinic to go and have, it just needed to be weighed and measured.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is this happening? It's like in the middle of the school day. It's like my friends are still in class and I've been taken out of school, and it's just like I've had to strip down to my underwear, and so I'm like, this is not on. And I knew why I was there, and I knew it was because of what was going on in our family situation, meant that certain things would happen, and that wouldn't happen to anybody else. So I was kind of like, this is just not normal.
You joined the dots.
There was one time, I just worked it all out, and then I remember one time, I think, because we went to school around the corner from the flat that we grew up in. Even though when we went into, and then when we were in care, we still went to the same school, but we never used to see our birth mum. It was she wasn't really. She wasn't interested. She knew where we were, and she knew where we were living, because she would sometimes come for pre-arranged meetings to come and see us. So she knew where we were, but she was never. It was like, I think sometimes people have a fear that the birth family will come and take it. Like she was not up for that. She wasn't. She was never going to go and spring these children. Do you know what I mean? She wasn't going to do that. But there was one time that she'd come into school and she wanted to come and see me. And I said no, and my teacher was like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah." Do you know what I mean? And I was thinking, and I was really annoyed because I was thinking, I know she's not gone to ask to see my older brothers. She just wants to come and see me just to say hello. Like, I'm not having. No one's coming to knock for their kids in the middle of the school day. It's like, what?
Just off the scale, isn't it?
Yeah. What are you doing? And you're not coming to knock for all your kids. You're just coming to knock for one of them. So you're not seeing me. I know what you're doing. I'm not interested. We've got nothing to say to each other.
That's really insightful, though, isn't it? We often think of children not thinking having that understanding and nuance, but that's really.
I was so clued up on everything when it came to just, I don't know. I think when it came to how adults should be behaving, I soon worked out that she was doing it all wrong. I soon realised that we were being raised by somebody who didn't have a clue, and that came more obvious when the police are there, or just various people are in your life that you're like, And obviously, because we were a black family, everybody would come to deal with us was white, and I was just like, so it's just kind of, so the police were there, we had the social workers, we'd have teachers, and they just like, people just looking at us, you're thinking, they're looking at us like something's not on, do you know what I mean, something's not right. So from early doors, I knew, I was well aware.
Wow. I'm intrigued to know why you start, because out of the blue, I'd never heard of you, and I kind of saw this kind of announcement, new podcast, and I went, oh, that's interesting. Competition, have a little look. And I'm not childish or competitive in any way. That's not true. And I had a little look, and I went, oh, that's all right. Where have you come from? What? So you've obviously, you're at a stage in your career and your life, and then all of a sudden you kind of had this moment where you want to start to ask these questions and meet these people. So what sort of inspired that move into podcasting? Or
well, Well, I've been doing comedy for a while, and loads of comedians do podcasts, and I didn't want to do a comedy podcast, but I was thinking, because I was doing my show a couple of years ago, and I talk about being adopted and sort of identity and transracial adoption. But I'm always, whenever kind of fostering and adoption comes up, you never hear from the adults who've been fostered or adopted.
Yeah.
You always hear there's always the parents' perspective and people who work within that area, whether it's social workers and policy makers and all, but you never hear about the adults. You never hear. So the general public who know nothing about adoption only get it through the media, and they only get it through the media when something bad has happened.
Yeah.
So like a child dies, that child was going to social services, social workers messed up, blah blah blah, and you're like, do you know what? Those stories are dreadful, but they're also really rare.
Yeah.
And it's like, there are thousands of children who get fostered and adopted, and they don't end up in prison. They're just kind of dysfunctional adults like everybody else. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, so I just thought to myself, why don't I just go and track down people who've had that experience, and also just speak to people who were involved in it, because even though we were quite involved in our kind of fostering and adoption journey, you don't know all the admin that goes on into it. Do you know what I mean?
The paperwork.
You don't know. It's just like every now and again you see your social worker and they tell you stuff and you go, okay, yeah, cool, I get it, and that's it. And so you know, but you also don't know what certain things are. So that's kind of why I started the podcast.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I am actually. I find it really interesting. It's quite emotional sometimes because it just makes me think about myself.
Yeah.
And bits of myself that I don't really think about, and maybe just be mindful of myself and mindful of what I've been through, and also not to give myself a hard time about stuff, and not to give, and like, it was a conversation that I had early on in that podcast with somebody. It's the one I had with Martin Barrow.
Yeah. And
he was just really interesting, because he made me think about my birth family in a way that I've not really thought about. And it was just kind of, and so since then, and I think it was maybe, I'm not sure, I might have been working towards that anyway on my own, but I think about her slightly differently now. Like I give her, like, I'm still, and I hope I don't stop, but I'm still like, it's all on you. You are responsible for this situation. Yeah. You were the adult. You messed up. You might not have been aware that you were messing up, but you messed up. But I also give her a bit of, I'm also like, do you know what? Stuff has obviously happened in her life, and she just was not capable of parenting us.
Yeah.
And I you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of helped me just to be a bit more considerate of her in the whole situation, because for years I was really angry at her, and that didn't help me to be angry, to be honest.
Of course, yeah.
So
yeah.
I give her that, and so yeah, the podcast helped for that. It's helped.
Good. So have you got plans to do? I know I saw a tweet and you were saying coming soon.
I've done one more interview. And I'm lining up some more. We're going to do another one, but yeah, there will be some more. There will be. I want to do some more. I don't want to just leave it as what we've got. There's loads of people who I've kind of got lined up. It's just, just getting everybody in the right place. But yeah.
Well, it's been really interesting, and you've kind of made me think a little bit differently. I think you are. I don't think you realise how different your story is to the stories that we're kind of used to in the UK. I think.
Okay.
I think that it's very unusual kind of as young adults to. Young, like adolescents, to be adopted. That's just quite exceptional. I think you're the only ones in the UK that I know of that I've ever met. I mean, not that I'm an authority, but I just think you have a real insight into the kind of a young person who's on the cusp of leaving care, and the decisions and the options that are open to that young person. So a really interesting story, and you're so open. So I really appreciate you talking to me, and I wish you well. And when your next podcast comes. Copies in, and we'll DM, and we'll make sure everyone listens to your new podcast.
Yeah, cool. I will do. Cool. Okay. Thank you very much.
Look
Thank you for
yourself.
having me.
No worries. Bye bye.
And you. Cheers. Thank you. Bye bye.
So that was Twayna Mayne. I have to confess, Scott, I did miss you.
Do you know what? I listened to it earlier because I'm letting away our secrets now. I actually get to listen to interviews before we record.
What you mean? We didn't just sat here in silence and listen to the interview through?
And I actually was very jealous that I couldn't make that one because I just thought I laughed in the first kind of 10 seconds. Well, maybe not 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. I don't know, it's just something she said. I can't even... no, it wasn't laugh. Sorry, it wasn't laughter. I take that back. It wasn't laughter. I went, oh my God, when I heard how old she was when she was 16. When she was adopted, sorry. Because she was 15 when she was 14.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what?
Exactly.
I know she's a little bit older, and you called her young. You said she's the same age as you. Is she
she's about. Well, if she was adopted in 1989, that puts her at 7. That would make her 73. So she's about my age, yeah.
Okay.
Early mid 40s.
So it is obviously a different time, but the same. We know this. We know because we hear it and we listen. Believe it or not, I know people say we don't listen, but we do listen.
You do.
That actually a lot of the same kind of things thread through, don't they? Whether you were adopted in the 60s or whether you were adopted last year. Well, maybe they probably couldn't tell us when they were adopted last year, but you know what I'm saying. It just seemed. Yeah, I was just shocked. and I don't mean in a negative way. I just mean in a wow. For her to talk, I mean, she says she's not pro-adoption, she's not anti-adoption, but she gets that kind of sense of belonging to a family, and and it was almost like I don't want to use that word, ownership, but it was almost like she needed to be part of something where she felt real, where she owned her parents and her family and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, she bowled me over actually. She really did. I loved listening to her. I really, really did love listening to her. She just brought up some really, really, really amazing kind of points. And
I can recommend listening.
She's the sort of person I would sit in the pub with. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I was thinking. You feel like
yak with.
Yeah, she's got lots of really interesting views, and all born out of a really unique perspective and experience, but actually quite. But born in stuff that we know. So what I find also quite unusual, and if you listen to her podcast, which is really worth a listen because it's so different, is that like we are so well versed. Thank you, Scott. When's your annual appraisal due?
Sorry, I'm tired. It's
clearly.
Mate. Anyway, go on.
No, I was saying that I forgot my point now. That was a good one as well. I rest my case. What is interesting is that we are really well versed in the system, aren't we?
Yes, that was what I thought as well. Yeah,
Whereas to her, as someone who's travelled it in a way that we've never travelled it, it's just there's her perspective on it is quite unique, and actually some of that like background mechanics and cogs and wheels are just not important and not relevant. And why should she know that stuff?
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I was sitting there going, well, what? And this isn't this. I'm not criticising her for not knowing this or any adoptee, but you do kind of tend to think, especially, I guess it's maybe the world that I mix in because, when I think about some of the kind of events I go to. So as an example, yesterday I went to an event in Yorkshire and Humber, and there was the PAC UK adoptees group were there. So in my head I'm thinking, well, they're informed, they're getting support, they know what adoption is, they know how it works. In my head, this is Scott's perspective, nobody else's.
A special place.
Maybe. I don't know, very special place where it's all pop-up books and champagne. There's but to me, everybody who's adopted is well informed about the process, about the all the stuff that we know. But
why
forget that isn't the case? That's not the case. And actually, how many of them are actually really interested in what we know? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the key thing. And that's why we haven't pretended to be anything but adoptive parents and we've had fostering experience. We would never ever speak on behalf of any adoptee in a way that would make out that we know how they feel and all that sort of stuff. And that's why her voice on top of all the other adoptees' voices are really important. And her podcast is probably, I would put it on. I mean, she's obviously a lot more experienced as a public speaking and presenting than we are. Maybe, I don't know, because I've not listened to her podcast, but I would suspect that it's on a par to what we do in some ways, and any other kind of adoptive parent who's sharing their experience on a podcast, because actually it's there to inform, and it's there to to do what we do for adoptive parents. She's there to do that for her
community,
kind of community, if you like.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It is a unique voice, and I just thought that speaking to her, I mean, I came away with more questions and things that are rattling around my head. The stuff around, for obvious reasons, is important to me, is the transracial adoption stuff, and that is an issue. I don't know about you, but I'm really reluctant to go into in a public forum because there's so many. How shall I say? I'm being very careful, but it's probably one area where I do get a lot of friction online, where I can almost guarantee that if I raise the subject, I'll get some friction. I mind a lynching with direct messages and things. But actually, those conversations are really hard. And she's and the conclusion she came to was, like, it's right for some, it's not right, and it's wrong for others. It's that idea of, I want to adopt a black baby.
I did like I liked what she said about that, actually, because she was like, someone said, oh, they would love a little black baby, or that was how I kind of heard it in my head, and she was like, well, that's when I'm kind of anti-adoption. Do you know what I mean? Because that's their reasoning, because they want a little black baby. Is that, I'm not suggesting it is, but I mean, is that something because, you watch all these programs where we help people abroad through charity,
comic relief and the
children need and all that sort of stuff. Is that as a result of that? Because I remember having conversations, well, not me instigating conversations, but people who I've had conversations with saying exactly the same thing, and you just think, really? Do you know? Not necessarily even as an adopter, but it's just something that's just.
It's like a view that's from 100 years ago, isn't it? It feels so out of touch with contemporary adoption.
And I liked what you said as well about so black children in care and who are adopted are overrepresented, but foster carers and adoptive parents who are black are underrepresented. And I think that's quite a key part of it, isn't it? Because
it's the perfect storm, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you just think, I mean, I'm not offering any solutions. I'm just saying that that is really, really quite an important thing to take into account.
It's a square that can't be circled. And I think
exactly.
There's a couple of things in that you look at the statistics the DFE put out every year, and you see that children of colour spend longer waiting to be placed and matched and decisions is made. But then you see, sort of set against that there's this really kind of complicated narrative, and it depends where you are in the country. Sort of more metropolitan would be more adverse, but then probably if you go somewhere like London, which is a really diverse populace, then you've got more chances. But it's interesting because one of the stories, one of the upcoming adopter stories, plug for the show, plug your own show, it doesn't work, does it? You're already listening. Stupid boy. Was from a couple, a white woman and a Asian man, and the challenges they faced. And you'd think that agencies would be snapping people's hands off. It's a circle that can't be squared.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. I probably haven't, actually, because I think we would. No, I wouldn't remember. So when Tris and I were first approved, the first children that we considered were a sibling pair, boy and girl, and they were. See, I'm really struggling to without offending people on how to describe them.
Just go for it.
They were their dad was black and their mum was white, so they're mixed race, I guess. Is that the right term?
Well, even that you could ask 10 different people, but mixed.
Yeah,
we'll just say mixed. They're mixed.
Okay, right.
We'll call mixed.
So they're mixed parentage, and it was really interesting because it's not that we didn't feel the same about them for no particular reason. I think it was a girl thing, actually, because obviously boys and we're a big family of boys, but it was really interesting because when we thought about it, and we thought, would it be fair, where we lived at the time, would it be fair to bring into this town, and bearing in mind we weren't from that town, we were from very different areas where we lived kind of different kind of.
Was it we living in Cambridgeshire then?
Yeah.
Yeah, so quite rural.
Yeah, rural, yeah. And we came to the conclusion after lots of discussion between the two of us that actually, would it be fair to put those two children into a situation where they wouldn't have anybody to relate to? No, there would be nobody to relate to in the sense of their ethnicity or
no one that would reflect
heritage and exactly
what they see in the mirror.
And it was a really hard decision to make, and I remember making it actually because we were on holiday.
Really?
When we had to make the decision. And I remember us sitting because we were at my auntie's house in Canada actually, and I remember sitting there and we talked for hours about this. I mean, it wasn't something that we did just 5 minutes and went, nah, we can't do that.
I think prospective adopters do that. You go through every little nuance, and this is a big one, isn't it? It's a massive deal.
Yeah, and that I did probably another 4 hours. How fair it would be on them, not on us, because we're two men. It was going to be obvious
really
that they weren't biologically ours anyway. In our eyes. So it really wasn't about us. It was about what can we put them through that. And I can still remember the names. I can still remember. I can still see them on the photograph and all that stuff. So it's such a hard decision. But do you know what? Whether they ended up being adopted or not, I don't know, because obviously you never find that sort of stuff out. But I know we made the right decision for them. Yeah. Because actually that area is still very white dominated. Not necessarily just with English people, but it's very white dominated. And I just couldn't bring myself to do that to any child.
But it's a complicated decision, because one of the things I have asked and raised a few times with a few different people is this idea that we don't actually, there's no statistics of how many children who are not white get placed with white adopters. Yeah. There's no records of that. There's no one collating that data. And in some ways, I've asked the question, I can't remember where I was, and I asked the question of someone who was influential, and they said the main issue is, though, what do we then do with it? There's an increased burden to collate data on local authorities. So they do like a fostering service has their data set, which they do every year. They collate the data set, it goes to the DFE and produces the statistics. So it's really in depth. It's all about the data set covers things like if there's been a breakdown, if there's been an allegation, if foster carers have a child with them that's not within their registration. You registered 0 to 8 and you've got a 9-year-old, then why did you get a 9-year-old? So that's what fostering service does. But I think they were then replicating that in adoption services. But every single piece of data that they collated, they've got to justify, and they want to reduce the burden. And actually, I was at the leadership board last week, and the head of the children. I was, yeah. Did you notice that? He said you've got to justify every bit of data we collate, because for adopted children, we collate more data than every other group of children. And the question is why? And that's a good question. Why do we elevate them above other children? Well, as an adoptive parent, I think my children should be top of the front of the queue. But so the question I was back to the original question, which was why don't we collate the data of how many white parents, black children, white parents? That's really binary. Yeah. But what would we do with that data? What would you do?
It doesn't matter what we do with it. It's there so that we know, because. Sorry, this is just my simple pop-up book head.
Okay.
Just got a pop-up book and there's some figures there, and it's like, that's really interesting. In actual fact, what do we do with that? Yes, that's a good question. What do we do with that? But actually, should we not know this? We should just know this. This should be something that we just know, and so that we know it.
That's a comprehensive argument you've got there. Almost
pop-up book mind is just very simple. It's black and white. It's just
yes.
Pardon the pun.
See what you did there. Well done. You're here all week.
No, but feel free to complain about that one.
It's a massive question, and to be honest, I look across all the things I'm doing, probably like you do, and I go, I'm kind of fighting this little corner. And it's the one thing that I have a huge. Mm-hmm. It would be the one issue that I would, if I could pick up any other issue, I'd pick up the issue of children of transracial adoption. Massive.
And that's the thing. So let's compare that.
Yeah.
So you're a parent of within that kind of cohort.
Yeah, I've got a black daughter. I've got
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got and I'm a same-sex adopter.
Yeah.
We know the statistics of same-sex adoption. For what reason? Let's turn that the other way. Why do we need to? It's the same thing. No, it is the same thing because actually we should know.
It's not the same thing.
All right, it's not the same thing, but it's the same thing.
I tell you, you're on fire tonight. You are on fire. How can you fight with this man?
No wonder they stopped me going today.
There rests the case for the prosecution, Your Honour. Because
send him dead. But no, it's about, well, I'm struggling with the words a little bit, but it's about these kind of little cohorts that we've got, isn't it? Or big cohorts even. We know that there's this many adoptions per year. We know that this many same-sex couples adopt a year. We know that.
Yeah.
Do we know that this many single adopters adopt a year? I don't know. I really don't know.
You could. You could probably get that data.
Yeah. Why should we not know the same about transracial adoptions?
Well, the old adage is you measure what matters, don't you?
Well, exactly, yeah. But they matter.
Well, that
matter because, yeah.
But to be honest, see, but the issue for me is that when I've picked this up, I've had flack.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why? Because you're trying to put.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe because I'm a bit clumsy in my words occasionally. I don't know. Well, I'm not. I don't think I am. I think that it's a hugely important issue. But to be honest, I don't really know what, other than it being interesting, what we're going to do with it. So, because you say that, so black and children of colour are overrepresented, but certain, black children are definitely overrepresented. Asian children are underrepresented, but within the cohort of adopters.
That's not a bad thing if
well, I think that's part. Yeah. But within the adopters community, it's predominantly white. Mm-hmm. What's the 12% same-sex couples, but they're predominantly white. So it's in some ways you think, well, is it an issue that's going away, and is it an issue? Mm-hmm. The bigger question is why are black children overrepresented? Yeah. And that's the bigger issue about institutional racism and how people access services and how services perceive people of colour. So it's complicated, and I'm constantly conscious of me dancing around my language because I don't live in I don't live in a diverse community. I work in a diverse community, but I don't live in one. I've
See, when I come up and I come to your little dwelling, there's so many different people there. I don't even know what to say.
Well,
colours.
But as a family, we are a jigsaw of people.
You are.
Anne, who lives with us, Queenie, she's mixed. Lottie, Flossie, and Peanut are mixed. Well, even to the point where my elder, the big three, one of their grandparents was Asian. So we got asked questions about that. We're going, it's a quarter. It's not even a quarter, it's an eighth. And you're going, but yeah, we were being filmed by the BBC, so everyone was like, ooh, it would be super cool. So it's a really complicated, I think it's a complicated issue, and I would love to pick it up, but I don't feel like I'm educated enough about it.
Anyway.
No, I did want to get Perlita Harris on it, who's kind of written some really interesting books, not books that I didn't necessarily like, about the experiences of children that. Cause she's the only person who's written books on it. That's one of the main reasons they're interesting.
All right. Why don't you write a book on that then, Mr. Cole?
Oh yeah, stick a broom on backside. I'll sweep as I go. Honestly.
Oh, it's not like you're doing anything else.
No, I'm pottering on. So I do think it's an issue that we need to explore. We need to consider. I just don't know whether I'm the right person.
It's really interesting. It's really intrigued me. It's really pulled me in. And the interview that you did was just I found it really. I thought a lot actually when she was talking, and I was just going, oh yeah.
Her story's amazing. It's
and the way she tells it as well. I mean, she admits that. that life that she's had, it's a really big story. She's obviously a success within that. But just, it gives you a little bit of hope. I know it's a different era in terms of, as in the dates, but actually her experience isn't very much different. If you think
it's quite contemporary.
Some of her experiences of being with her birth mum. My days, can you imagine having 5 children under the age of 5?
Yeah, and in the midst of that, the loss of one of them. Yeah. So there would have been 6. Yeah. So you kind of go, whoa, complicated. But the whole thing around identity, siblings, really just fascinating woman. And I think, I'd love, like you say, I think what I'd love to do is to sit down and have a pint with her and say, tell me some stuff. We'll have to sort that out, won't we?
We'll have to sort that out, yeah.
Anyway, I've got a list.
If she mixes with players like us, I don't know, she does.
The riffraff.
The riffraff of the podcasting world.
Yeah, we are the riffraff. I like what you did on Twitter last night, which was try and rustle up some.
Well, I was just going to mention that, but I wasn't sure because you really shy away from stuff like that. But I think that we should celebrate. And do you know what? If we don't get nominated, if we don't make the cut, then fine. But at least we tried. And if you don't know what we're talking about the British Podcast Awards.
Listener's Choice.
Listener's Choice Award for this year. We didn't actually, because we don't fit into categories, do we?
Not really, not very well. We're not parent. Well, are we parenting?
Well, we are, but it's really difficult to find our category. And also, there's the thing for me with the Podcast Awards is I'm not dissing them, but there's a lot of kind of high-profile podcasts in there, and you think, well, what's the chances? You've no chance when you've got a BBC4 podcast or. So when they tweeted yesterday, because I always do have a look at them and see if anybody's maybe nominated.
By chance.
Unlikely. But the Listeners Award, which I hadn't seen last year actually, so I don't know. Is it new? No, I don't think
I'm not sure.
But anyway. So we're asking our dear listeners to pop onto the British Podcast Awards website. We'll put the link in this podcast. So
will we?
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
And you just search for us, Adoption and Fostering Podcast, and then you put in your email address and your name, and then you press submit, and you will have voted for us. And
that's good. Did you see I got a plug for us on Radio 2?
Oh my days, I did. I was like, so here's the story, dear listener. So I get a phone call yesterday via work saying, can you do the Jeremy Vine show? I was like, I'm going to be on a train. There's no chance of me doing the Jeremy Vine show when I'm on a train, because it just doesn't work. When you go through all those tunnels, you can't do it on the Wi-Fi, and plus you're on a train. I don't want to be talking about adoption.
I'm on the train!
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Very Dom Jolly and or whatever. So I suggested to the guy who rang me from head office, I said, I'll call, because my other colleagues were busy as well.
So I wasn't second choice?
You were second choice, actually. You were. I probably wasn't first choice.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll take that.
Yeah. So I said, Al calls. So I rang Al and I said, would you do the Jeremy Vine show? It's a story about this letter that was done within, it was Yorkshire, wasn't it? It was Yorkshire.
Yeah, by the mum with the mental ill health,
wrote a letter to the court and to her daughter, hopefully in later life she'll be able to read it. She'll be able to understand.
So it's really moving.
Her mum made that decision and blah, blah, blah. And it was
blah, blah, blah.
No, you know what I mean. Sorry.
Story.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. I'm just trying to shorten it so that people don't get bored of listening to my voice.
I'm slipping into a coma.
Anyway, so I said, yeah, I'll do that, no problem. But I challenged them on two things. One of them he failed dramatically on.
Oh.
And the other one, I thought he failed until the very end of the
Boom.
interview.
Out the park.
So the first one was to get into the conversation the word discombobulated, which you failed epically at, and I'm really disappointed in you, Mr. Coates, on that.
Yes.
Yeah, and
I've let you down badly again.
You have, again.
Oh.
And the second one was to get a mention of the Adoption and Fostering Podcast. So the interview came to a close, and the guy who's interviewed, because it wasn't actually Jeremy Vine,
it was a replacement.
And he said that was our course. And if you want to hear more from our course, listen to his podcast, Adoption and Fostering Podcast.
Excellent.
So, of course, I was like going, yes. And then I went, actually, that's his podcast. Thank you very much. And then I listened to the show today because I was driving somewhere, and it was Vanessa Feltz. You could have Vanessa Feltz.
Oh,
I mean,
Vanessa
that would have been a bit more interesting.
That would be
in terms of, you know,
well,
the technique.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. And I started to listen back, but I couldn't. I started to have palpitations listening to myself to see what I'd actually said. Because in the middle of it all, we've got men fitting an oil tank in the back garden, and the kids are on holiday. So I'd said to the kids, Paula had said to the kids, just leave your dad alone. I'd said to the kids, leave me alone. So I go, and I thought, they'll not leave me alone. If I hadn't said nothing, they'd have not come anywhere near me for 8 hours straight. So I went and hid in my bedroom, didn't lock the door, shut the door, but it's got quite stiff, so I know that the little ones can't get in. So I was in the bedroom, and then I heard this knocking. And it was downstairs. The workmen wanted to be in, started up a steel saw, and were cutting paving slabs outside my bedroom. So this is like the introduction with the other woman talking, and I'm going, I don't know what to do. I really don't. And then I'm sure they'll stop, and they just stopped just in time. And so he asked me the question, and it was again, they asked you the wrong question, so that was fine. I was rubbish, total prattle on. And then the next question, I got halfway through, and there was the sound of a hand desperately banging on the door. So I went over, and I was talking, giving my answer, and I opened the door, and there's Peanut sobbing. So I had my mouthed, go away, while I'm having, and then slamming the door. And then I thought, I have no idea how I got to this point in the conversation. I don't know what I'm saying, and I've just said something. And then he went, oh, go ahead, and then he finished. And it turned out that Peanut had stolen the remote control from the others who were trying to listen to it on the radio. So they'd, how shall I say it in inverted commas, they'd persuaded her to give it back. And she was coming to tell me because they'd hurt her back. So it was just ridiculous.
No. You couldn't hear that on the interview. I didn't hear any of that.
Did you not? So, it did sound like I am on a train, though. Did you hear it?
No.
It was That was rubbish. Anyway, it was a laugh.
But anyway, it's good. Well done, you. And well done for getting that mention at the end.
Thank you very much. Boom. And it made absolutely one bit of difference to the podcast stats yesterday. And I looked, not one. Zero difference. In fact, there's less. iTunes pulled it. Tell me what's happening, because it's been quite a week, actually. After Adoption made an announcement, didn't they?
It sadly did. Very sadly, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to be a common thing where there's being mergers or mergers, takeovers, whatever you want to call it in this sector. And After Adoption sadly closed the doors last week to the services. I believe that they're still working behind the scenes trying to allocate some of the services out to other agencies.
It's a big deal, isn't it, though?
It's a massive deal. Massive deal. I mean, the interesting thing about After Adoption is I always remember 7-8 years ago, I thought After Adoption were something else, but it turns out they weren't. And I always remember coming across these kind of online forums, because I used to use the Adoption UK once, and I needed more because I was very needy.
You were bored at home.
And I did come across something, and I think it was After Adoption, and they did message boards, but it was for everybody. Anybody could use it that was affected by adoption. So, if you were adopted, if you were a birth parent, if you were an adopted parent. And I found myself being quite scared of that, actually, because I was very new to adoption. So I didn't use it. But obviously, working in the sector like I do, I have quite a lot. Well, I did have quite a bit of involvement with them in one way or another, to the point where the new launch of the Yorkshire and Humber independent adoption service yesterday, that was supposed to be PAC UK, After Adoption, and Adoption UK, and sadly it's become PAC and Adoption UK.
But even PAC have
so sad. Yeah, PAC have merged with Family Action.
But to my mind, that's it wasn't a merge by choice. It wasn't, was it? It was a necessity. Was it? You probably can't say, can you? But that's what it seemed like. But it just seems that 5 years ago we had these three cornerstones of the situation, but now we're just down to nothing. And I know I was talking to someone today, and they're saying, well, actually, it means that.
I'd like to think there's not just nothing.
No, but like for me in the northeast, the nearest presence is Leeds, which is 100 miles from me. So that's
where it's really interesting yesterday, though, because the history of after adoption was explained. Because I didn't realise this. There was two after adoptions. One was after adoption Yorkshire, which was then merged, taken over. I don't know because it was a few years ago with PAC UK or PAC, which became PAC UK because PAC was in London. And then they took over the after adoption in Yorkshire. They were separate entities, but they had the same name, if that makes sense. I don't know how it worked because I wasn't around then, so forgive my kind of ignorance. But it was really interesting to hear the story and for it to be recognised. I know a number of the staff and what have you.
But it's a time of anxiety for staff. I mean, you've got to feel for staff, but for families who are accessing the service and tens of thousands of records that they hold, because it's 30 years they've been going, 31 years, 29 years, something.
It's quite a long time. I mean, that's the thing for me. It's about the services. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do feel sorry for staff, of course do. But the service user, the birth families, the adopted people. That service was groundbreaking and continued to kind of break ground as well. Safe Base, which is on a par to Adoption UK's Parent Our Children, but it's delivered differently. Therapeutic parenting course. The Talk Adoption, which was for young people as well.
We had a local group that was really well attended and I think really enjoyed by young people. And the services they offered to adoptees.
Taken over by Adoption UK in Wales.
Right.
Because Wales was one of the the larger ones. So that's been taken over by Adoption UK in Wales.
But I know
it's such an important service, and it's just I saw some statistics around that. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to share them, but normally a voluntary adoption agency would depend on would have an income from placements and an income from adoption support commissioning, and the kind of the what's it called, the split in terms of
the two parts of the business
placements and was the wrong way around as far as I can see. So it was very much there was less adoption less adoption support funding, but yet they were doing this massive provision rightly because it's needed not just for adopted parents but for birth families, for birth parents.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was a student, I worked in a mental health kind of halfway house between hospital and the community, and it was a really interesting experience, and it opened my eyes about lots of different things about adult mental health and stuff. But one of the things was there was a woman she was maybe in her late 60s, and she was vulnerable because of her mental health. But actually, when the story came out that she was as a young woman, she'd had a child kind of forcibly, she'd relinquished her child, and that doesn't
probably not.
And within the context of that, but we look back now, we see things differently. And she was desperate to try and find her child, and it was the only service we could offer because the local authorities were kind of like, well, who is this woman, and what, and because of her mental ill health, her own mental ill health, and her own history, which is really, really quite challenging. They're just not willing to engage. But after adoption, I offered some really good advice and really supported that. But they need, again, it's a financial model. Every case is a genuine case of need, but actually, someone's got to pay for it.
Yeah, and this thing. So yesterday, the one adoption in Yorkshire, obviously, one adoption, West Yorkshire is just over 2 years old, and that's a regional adoption agency made up of Leeds and Bradford and that kind of area. It's taken them this long because of the regionalisation agenda, which we've kind of been talking about.
Oh, don't get me started.
But it's taken them 2 years to get to this point, because of all the kind of other stuff that they've been doing. But Beth Neal was there, and
friend of the show.
I know, and I did tweet this comment actually, and she said, that these agencies, must continue to use independent providers for some of these services. They have to invest in it. They have to invest in this experience, and one of the guys who shared his story, he's actually one of the kind of project leads on the service, and he was adopted, and he shared part of his story and how it was really important for him to have that independence, and how it did go wrong with the reunification with his birth mom and all that sort of stuff. And it just hit home to me how important these independent services are, more than ever. I'm a big believer in being able to access what I need to access for my family or for my children, and that shouldn't be dictated to me, because actually one size does not fit all. I could go to one organisation and it's just not going to be the right approach, but I can go to another organisation across the high street and that might be the perfect fit.
Yeah.
I should have that choice. And as this goes on, where regionalisation actually affects all of these
little minnows,
agencies, the voluntary sector, we're going to lose it, and we're going to be in a worse position.
We're going to lose that expertise and that knowledge, and it is a concern, because I think that the government's the 2020 vision for adoption, I think I've said it before, one of the main tenets was this idea of workforce development. I'm just not necessarily seeing that. I mean, I'm not probably on the ground like you are, but actually stuff like Beth Neal, who is groundbreaking. No, she's not groundbreaking. She's just saying what we've all known for years. But
she's got the evidence.
She's got the evidence.
We've been saying it, but she's now got the evidence. She's gone, actually, I wonder if there must be something in that. It makes sense. Off you go and research.
Yeah, and she's been doing it for 20 years. And I was talking to someone who knew her when she started, and said, she was just pottering away in a corner. And now 20 years later, and she's and 20 years later, she's kind of a world expert on it, and her data is kind of world leading, really. And we've jokingly said, we need to set up an independent contact service, which I think there's merit in, but there's probably no money in it. And I think that we need to, but those are the voices we need to be influencing, the social workers. But people like my local agency, one of the local ones to me, DFW Adoption, which was Durham Family Welfare. Which again, not necessarily by choice. It's kind of,
who knows? I don't know. And there was one that actually closed its doors in. I'm not sure. No, it was further down in Yorkshire. I think it was Nottingham or something like that.
The deep south.
Last year as well.
But the concern for me is that I know that, I mean, as it turns out, DFW haven't gone to the wall, but they've just big changes, I'm sure. But they hold families we hear again and again this idea that families need a lifetime provision. I'll be known to services for years because of the nature of my children. Many services, prison service. That's just me. So there's lots going on there, and I think that
and also those that have the common sense, I want to call it, is that's not what I mean, because we didn't do this, but those that have the common sense to shop around for an agency first and decide that voluntary agency is what's going to support them through the next 20 years. To have that taken away from you, and then have to go to the local authority where you've got to fight,
get to the back of the queue, sort of thing,
for a statutory assessment of need to be able to make your application to the Adoption Support Fund, or an RAA that actually you don't know what's going on in that RAA, you don't know where people are, you don't know what they're doing, etc., etc.
Well, I got a message today about an RAA where someone had said that the RAA, there's no contact details for adoption support, they're only taking on adopters. That was a direct message today, and you got flames and brimstone. That's horrific for families.
That is, I mean, and I don't like to talk about it too much, but with one of the services that we provide, Adopt a Voice, where we're actively trying to engage with adopters so that they can feed back on stuff like that. And that's the first thing that comes up every time. Why is their website only got information events?
For perspectives.
Why has it not got events about stay and play or this or that or the next thing? It's all about recruitment, and I get the need to recruit. I get that.
That's the financial model.
Balanced. Yeah. Anyway, I've got this feeling that I could rant about this.
Yeah.
We don't stop.
Wow, we're on a roll. I've got a couple of other things on my list. One is you've attached me into a WhatsApp group that's becoming quite sinister, Scott. And I think it needs...
Why?
Right. So let me reframe this. It's a WhatsApp group where it's only got men in, right? Right. And the men post in the group sizes and measurements of various parts of their body. When I say it like that, Scott, it sounds quite sinister and inappropriate, doesn't it?
Especially when they then send them back in centimetres or millimetres.
Don't get me started on the metric system, because I'm a true evangelist. I love the metric system.
Yeah? So you might. I just go in whatever the standard is.
So basically, you're getting us all measured up for Scottish man skirts. What are they called?
Yeah, basically, yeah. As I was last week on Saturday. I actually wore one last week.
I saw that. But what is sinister? I've got pictures of you being measured. It's really sinister.
I know, but that was because I was really panicked by the way she was measuring me, because I thought, and do you remember we had this conversation
about my inside leg?
When Lady C measured your inside leg, and I said, why did she do that? You're wearing a kill, not a trousers. So I got really panicked about the fact that, they might not fit right, blah, blah. And they don't measure like a pair of trousers.
Well, clearly it's a skirt.
No, I don't. It's not a skirt. Stop it. It's not a skirt.
What is it then?
I've never worn one before, so I don't know. But they measured your belly button.
Didn't we Scott have a... We Scott go to school in your skirt.
That's not how it worked, Al.
Is that not your primary school experience?
No, they didn't make
it. If you don't come to school in your skirts, there'll be no milk and no iron brew.
Anyway, so that's why I set up a little WhatsApp, so I didn't have to just keep on copy and pasting. But anyway, you've obviously taken great offence to it. Thanks for that.
It's quite creepy, really.
Trashing my wedding dream of getting married in a kilt.
If we're talking about offences, how's the Adoption UK survey going? This big survey you've been doing.
Oh, I don't know. That's not in my...
Right, I have a bone to pick with you, because everyone said,
with me?
Yeah,
with the survey?
With the whole survey, because I was copied into a tweet, and the tweet said, we had to increase the fields for number of children to include Al Coates. Oh, no, we had to increase it. Yeah, we had to increase it to 6 to include the number of children for Al Coates. And I don't know who it was. And I thought, well, it's not anonymous anymore, is it?
Really?
Because I thought...
Who tweeted that?
I'm not telling you who tweeted that. It was a joke by someone. But then I thought, well, of course, I can't do it now, can I? Because everyone will know.
You've got 6 children. There's very few doctors who have 6 children.
Yeah. So, well, that'll narrow it down. They go, lives in the north, got 6 children.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's...
I hope it goes well for you.
Well,
I didn't partake.
I'm not going to lie. I think you need to pick that up with a friend of the show, Becky.
Oh, she got married. Congratulations to Becky.
She did, and she did send an email today in town and going, just like, my surname has changed, and I can't remember what it is. Well, that's how much I was paying attention. But yes, Becky designed the survey, so drop her an email and let her know that you're not happy.
Well, I will. Mm-hmm. I'll get onto your complaints department.
Yeah, too, yeah. And she doesn't listen to the podcast anyway, unless she's on it, so, I can say what I like, really.
That's fair dues. We should get her on soon, shouldn't we?
Yeah, we should actually. Maybe we should get her, Jenny, and me on after all the weddings are over.
Yes.
Because Jenny Jones is getting married on the same day that I am.
Well, I could have a wedding cast.
I've nicked all the guests. So.
Yeah, I'm gutted that you're getting married, because I got a free invite to go to the Beth Neal conference.
Yeah, so did I first. Thank you. So don't start that. And I actually accepted it, but then I realised I'm getting married.
Awkward.
Yeah, it was a little bit, because I was just about to click send. I went 10th of May. No, I can't do the 10th of May.
What was it? Something rings a bell.
You idiot. Yeah, you idiot. Yeah. Well, I got sent it because they were looking for an adopter's perspective on contact and stuff like that. And
the podcast got an invite.
Oh, fabulous. And no.
Yeah. Well, the podcast get an invite, so we could go off and do a podcast, which I thought would be really good, but then I realised we couldn't. But we're going to try and work that out, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Right. Yeah, hopefully, because it will be a really interesting conference, actually, I think.
It will be pivotal. I'm aware that we're way past our bedtime. We've got some interesting guests coming on, haven't we? We've got Betsy DeTherry, who's going to talk about shame.
Yeah.
We've got that one guest who still has to get permission from the Pope. In writing, in triplicate. Name no names. We've got what that did.
Windsor Sandu.
Yes, we've got
it's from International Centre for Adoption.
Yes, that's.
I think that'll be a really interesting one because we've touched on this briefly before, haven't we?
Yeah.
No, we have. In terms of if you think about when we talked to Daniela Shanley,
yes,
who adopted from abroad. It would be really interesting to hear kind of the, I know they're all different, aren't they? They're all very different.
And I got quite a rebuttal by direct message, I think, after I'd mentioned it once on the podcast. Someone sent me a direct message and said, I'm not entirely sure about your attitude. And I agreed with them. My attitude wasn't necessarily good. And I said, but you're more than welcome to offer a rebuttal.
Yeah,
because I'm really happy with being wrong.
Yeah, and I think tonight's podcast with the interview is proof of that, because I learned just different things from that. I mean, that's what it's about, isn't it? We're all about the learning. Every day is a school day.
Every day is a school. Oh, that's a wonderful end, isn't it? So
I love that.
Yes, excellent.
So you don't want to know about the stag weekend then? You didn't come on then?
I vicariously lived your stag weekend through the pictures that Paula was posting. And some things you can never unsee, Scott. I literally was traumatised by the images.
I'll just say I'm still traumatised by the whole weekend.
Well, Sally Donovan was there.
I know. So I'm going to tell you one story and then we're going to say goodnight because I feel like I need to share it. And Sally Donovan, if you're listening, I'm really sorry. But on Friday night when we arrived, and I'm sure Paul has told you this, hasn't she?
She's told me so many things.
Right. Well,
the counsellor's asked her to stop.
So there's two stories. The first one was, and I won't keep banging on about it, but I just think they're two funny stories. So the first one was, we booked these booths in this pub in Edinburgh. These booths turned into trestle tables, so I'm not sure what happened there. But anyway, of course, me being me, I detest audience participation unless I'm prepared for it and I had a script and da-da-da-da-da. So I sat right at the back thinking, no way will I be found. Right?
Yeah, not unreasonable.
Drag queen comes on, what was his name? Ginger Rogers. Do not look him up because it's the most offensive act I've ever seen. It's fabulous.
Paula was traumatised.
Yeah, she was. So anyway, Drag Act comes out, and the first song that's being sung.
Oh yes.
every 5 words is replaced with a very rude word.
The rudest word.
I can't even say, but it begins with a C. And I was just mortified. I was absolutely mortified.
What did you expect?
Well, I didn't expect that in my 22 years as a gay man.
I'll have you know, I'm a respectable gay man.
I've never heard a song with every fifth word being that word. That's all I'm going to say. And of course, the first thing that popped into my head, and was Sally was there and Lady C was there, and I was thinking, oh my days, they're going to be so offended by that. Anyway, when I caught up with Lady C specifically afterwards, because I know that she's never heard that sort of language before, because your children never swear, do they?
Never.
She went, Scott, it was effing amazing.
Did she? Shut the front door.
You should see Al's face right now. He's shocked.
She's never dropped the F-bomb in front of me unless she's quoting someone.
She'd had a few.
Had she?
By that point. Yeah. So that was funny. So, and I felt a little bit more relaxed by that. But then the next part of the act was obviously, I'm really offensive. If you don't like it, you can leave, that sort of thing. That's not quite how he said it, but it was kind of that intent. So then he starts asking the audience what they're doing there and da-da-da. Well, of course, we were sat right at the front. So the first people that he came to were part of the group, the 22 people that I was there with.
22?
Just saying, Tristan, 22. You had how many on yours? 6.
Has he gone to Bangkok?
No, he's no. That's another story. Don't waffle on.
Anyway,
we don't have to test this
okay.
now. You distract me. One of my friends said, "Oh, we're here for a stag do." Well, that was it. Who's stag? Where is he? And of course, I'm sitting right at the back.
Yeah, of course.
One of two gents in our group. The other's been Mr. LL Guest. Just dropping names there. I'm also confused now. Yeah.
Head teacher?
No, Mr.'s LL Guest. No, that's true.
Off. Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah. Off
it's another
Twitter.
Yeah.
All right.
Can't say his real name because the two don't relate. Anyway, but the next thing is he sees Sally Donovan and all her loveliness.
She's lovely.
Just cozy, like always wants to give Sally lots of hugs because she's just so lovely. And he asked her when the last time she went to the hairdresser was.
How dare he?
Because of her fringe, and that she looked like a spaniel.
No.
Well, at that point, the ground could have swallowed me, opened up and swallowed me.
How could you do that to that woman?
Like, I won't lie, I was going to go and punch him, but I thought, no, because I'll get arrested, and then that would be...
I can see the headlines now. Gay adopter punches drag queen.
Over spaniel
comment of kind of much loved adoption national treasure.
Yeah, exactly. I was mortified, and I was lost for words. I was lost for words for hours after that. But yes, that was kind of the
tone.
The quality of the evening on the Friday. But yes, it was a very long weekend. It was very tiring.
And you were a bonny lad.
Sore heads. There was lots of sore heads the next day.
What's that?
Lots of sore heads on the Sundays.
And there's still lots of sore heads.
Yes, and I have sore kidneys.
You've chafed your innards.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Definitely. But so you didn't miss out really.
Well, this is an incredibly long podcast.
You'd have been to bed by 10:30.
I would have. If you managed to get this far in the podcast, thank you. Well done.
Well done.
Well done. Rock on. It's probably the people who are walking their dogs and have just forgotten. Wandering the woods, lost away from their children.
I think Blair Nell's the only one that realises there's anything at the end of the podcast anyways.
But we do have the runners who like to run. Keep on going, remember?
Not for an hour and a half, they don't.
No, that's true. Maybe they split it up over 7 or 8 runs. I don't know.
7 or 8 days.
7 or 8 weeks. Right, well, it's been, as always, the pleasure was all yours.
Yeah,
and I shall see you around soon.
You shall. Au revoir.
Bon Jovi.